Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Down Syndrome Center of Western Pennsylvania podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Kishore Volodi, and I am so excited today to have our guest today, Meeka Caldwell. And if you don't know her name, you will soon, because she's done something really cool in our Down syndrome community that really intersects with a lot of what we've been talking about on the podcast for the last several months. As we know, in the country right now, there's a lot of things going on within racial disparities that are being recognized perhaps for the first time by the general public, but have been present for a very long time. And one of the areas that we know that there's definitely disparities is just diversity in media. Like if you're watching the TV or movies or reading, books, even, kids' books like we're going to talk about today, very few of those books are going to have main or lead characters who are Black, who are Native American, who are Asian, and certainly very few books that talk about disability, at least in a positive sense within those realms. And so kind of going along that line of discussion, a few weeks ago, our clinic coordinator, Erin Kelly, who you guys met on the podcast a few podcasts ago, said, "Hey, you've got to read this book." And so as soon as I read the book, I knew I had to reach out to the author. And so Meeka, with all that intro, I really appreciate you joining us today on the podcast. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Any chance I get to talk about this book, I absolutely love it. So this is good.
Tell us a little bit, before we get right into the book, tell us a little bit about who you are, what it is that you do in your day job, and why you love people with Down syndrome.
Oh, gosh. So I am a mom. We're a blended family. So we actually have 6 kids total.
Wow.
Starting from I have to remember ages, right? So 23 all the way down to 6, and a 9 is our 6-year-old with Down syndrome. I still work full time, and I'm an HR manager in DC. And just learning, when we had Anian and kind of being involved in the community and being welcomed in the community, learning about all individuals with Down syndrome. This has been such a good journey because I feel like I have a chance to just make an impact, have a voice, and set him up well and educate others. So, that's a huge reason why I love people with Down syndrome. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because you don't really know what you don't know. So after we had him, it's like, this is a whole new world that opened up. Yeah. And it's been such a good journey ever since.
And even before we started recording today, Meeka, you were talking a little bit about your experience of having a child with Down syndrome, and I'm saying his name right, Anian, right?
Anian.
Right. And when Anian was born, trying to find other families that perhaps had a similar experience of having a child with Down syndrome, being Black, but you had a hard time with that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we got the diagnosis when I was 15 weeks pregnant. And like I told you, it was one of those things where I had never, ever knew anything of a Black person with Down syndrome. An Indian person, Native American person, no one. Yeah. And so when we got the diagnosis, I was like, oh, okay. Because in my head, I'm thinking, maybe there isn't any here. Yeah. What have you? And then upon learning, I asked the geneticist, like, hey, do you have a family that I can talk to, same community experiences and everything like that? And they were like, no. We don't have a family. So from their perspective, they didn't have any Black family that they knew with any children. As much as people come through their office, this is like a huge geneticist where I live. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So of course, how we love to do, we Google, we go on Facebook, we go on all these things to find out. And I eventually found a great community online. But the local community, it took a minute for me to find other parents that were Black, other parents that looked like me. And that's been my thing ever since. So when I'm out and I see another family, it's so exciting because I'm like, okay, I want to approach them and I want to make sure they're comfortable, but we have to stick together. So I have to go and meet them. So a lot of the times, when he was in school and he was small, I would try to find families because he went to a learning center where it was an integrated population of kids with disabilities and those without. So it was a good time to kind of meet other families. And I eventually found more and more and more and more. And I was like, okay, so why aren't we out here? Why aren't we out here accessing resources and knowing about things and having all these experiences that we can share? So it's been a huge journey of mine to just make sure we are represented, because after finding out, like you said, in media, books, TV, anything, we were not there. And even when you see certain things online, like you'll see a video and say, oh, we polled 50 parents of children with Down syndrome. And I'll click through 50. Yeah. I'll click through and be like, well, they could have called me. They could have called any other people that, any of my friends and families and stuff. But there's none. And I'll email people separately and say, hey, I've noticed that you don't have any representation in your polls, in your papers or whatever. And usually I don't get a response. So it's something.
Yeah. Yeah. And even, in my job, looking at medical studies and things like that, when they talk about studies being done for kids with Down syndrome or adults with Down syndrome, there's very little in terms of diversity, even within the patient populations that they choose for those studies. And so, yeah, it's really a big issue. And so here you are, you're a mom, you've got little Anian with you, and you're thinking, okay, how can I get the word out? And so you come up with this idea for the book. So tell me a little bit about this book. Let us know, like, what's it about? Who's the intended audience? That kind of thing.
Okay, so back, I think this was last year. I have been saying I wanted to write a book for a while, but, it's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
But constantly, when we have the celebration of like Down Syndrome Awareness Month or days, usually parents go into schools and they read books or bring literature, pamphlets, whatever, just to educate the kids. Usually, I'm friends with a lot of parents that have little kids. So, you can go into the schools and you find books. And I was like, I can't find a book that anyone that looks like us. And I would love to have that, like to go in there to educate the population. And so I was like, well, forget it. We're just going to have to write a book. And that wasn't an easy task because, again, I'm like a full-time HR person. Now I'm an author, but it was still something different. And I just started scouting around like, hey, anyone know an illustrator? I had no clue how to get started, first of all. So I'm just like looking for the things that I think I need in a book. Like, hey, anyone know an illustrator? Anyone know an editor, publisher? All this.
Yeah.
And my good friend actually introduced me to a friend of hers who was actually a publisher. And this publishing company had never done a children's book. So they were helping me along. They understood the mission of me just trying to bring out awareness, diversity, representation. And they're like, we just want to help you. So we'll just take you step by step how to do this and help you along the way until your book is published. And so when I was thinking of a friend like Anian, I just wanted to show his life. Like, I just wanted to show how in the community you can embrace everyone, because I think that's one of the things that we go through when people see our children. It's like, they don't know what to say. They don't know how to react. I mean, even sometimes people might come up to me and guess his age. And they'd be like, oh, is he 3? I'm like, he's 6. It's one of those things where I just want people to feel comfortable. These are children or adults or teens or whatever in our community. Let's embrace them just like we embrace anyone else. There's no fear here. There's no hesitation. They are in our schools. They're working. Yeah. Everything. So when I wrote the book, it was intended really for everyone. I just thought adults could read it, children, teachers, libraries should have it, because it just simply shows how he is working throughout the community. So it just kind of goes through his daily errands with mommy.
Yeah.
And how he's helpful, how people help him, and how there's that certain communication, and how when you already know the people in your community, like, they help him. They know that maybe he's working on his words. He's working on grasping things. So they're there to help. And that's what I envision the community to be about. Yeah. So this was like one of the introductory books, because I'm writing the second one now. Yeah. But I wanted to show his milestones, his life, just him. And that's it, for people just to know, okay, wow. And for other parents to be able to bring this book and teach to the kids. I wanted to be very easy to read, nice colors, and just get to know Anian. That's it.
So did I hear you say there's going to be a part 2?
Yes, this is actually going to be a series.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I have to, I'm writing the second book. Not going to get the title yet, but I'm writing the second one, and I have an idea for the third one, because I just wanted to keep going. I don't know how to cap it yet. Yeah. So when I do that, I just wanted to, just kind of go on and on and on for a little bit, so people could just like kind of see how he matriculates through school. Yeah. and introduce people like other therapists, you know, one-on-one aides, you know, things like that, that maybe kids have a question about. Like, hey, why is this other adult with him in school? Like, I don't have an adult with me in school, you know.
Right. Well, that's great. Yeah, you know, because that's the thing that really struck me as I was reading it and seeing, you know, it's just Anian hanging out with his mom and doing stuff, going to the store and all those kinds of things. And on the one hand, it's like, yeah, kids do that, but even kids with Down syndrome go to the store and they hang out with mom. But I think for us within the community of people with family members with Down syndrome, we're like, yeah, of course. But I think there's a huge audience out there that probably would be like, oh, I didn't realize that. And also just seeing the illustrations of seeing a Black family. And as you experienced too, when you first had Anian, it's that idea of, oh, wait a minute, there are people who are Black who have the Down syndrome. And I shared with you earlier, like, even for me, hanging out with my adult brother with Down syndrome, people will say, oh, I didn't know that Indians had Down syndrome. And I was like, oh my gosh. You're like, so it's so important, this book. So, and I love the fact that you're saying, you know, in terms of the intended audience, you're not saying, okay, this is a book just for people who are Black who have a child with Down syndrome. I mean, this is a book you're intending really for a wide audience.
Exactly. Yeah. For everyone to read. I just feel like when people, and I've gotten feedback like, oh my gosh, like this is so good. And yes, I didn't know, you know, Black people with Down syndrome or just the daily, like you said, the day-to-day errands, like, oh, okay, well, he goes out with you. Yes, he does. Like, you know, we do regular stuff because we're regular people. Like, it doesn't. So all these things I just wanted to show because it happens to be like a lot of questions that people ask you when you first say, okay, my child has Down syndrome. It's so many questions. And you want to be able to educate and you want to be able to just tell them, you know, what the truth is. Yeah. But questions that come across are just like, oh my gosh, okay, let me help. Let me do something to help because there's so many misconceptions and so many stigmas that are placed that I wanted to dispel. And I hopefully will, you know, attempt at doing that with the series of books for children too, because children are the ones who embrace him the most, like in his class, and he has friends and they kind of wait for him if he's trying to find a word or they'll help him or finish his sentence or so it's really cute and it's like I have nothing to worry about. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be just fine because people automatically just love him. Yeah, that's so great. You know, and I didn't mention this to you earlier, but we have at the hospital here in Pittsburgh, there's an internal TV station essentially where it's called the Dream Big Studio, and people will go on there. Like usually, kids will go on there and pretend to be do a TV show or something, and it gets broadcast within the hospital. And so they said, you know, we really would love to have staff, faculty members, or doctors or whatever, anybody, just like read kid stories on an afternoon. And guess what? We're going to be reading A Friend Like Anian in a few weeks. I'll be reading that to the entire hospital, which is really, I think, going to be a lot of fun. So your impact is going to be great. How do you see this book really impacting not only just children with Down syndrome, but families and educators and just society as a whole? How do you see this book potentially, and the series potentially having that impact? Well, you know, I see this could be something that is part of like a core reading for pretty much schools and stuff like that, because there's an education that has to be had. Especially like in my county, they're currently changing around the program. So we're going to have a lot of children with disabilities like in the mainstream school population. Yeah. So this just takes some education to give it to the kids, to give it to the teachers, especially because the teacher that he had previously, like in kindergarten, was like, oh, I've never taught a child with Down syndrome before. And I was like, well, you've taught children. So, you know, there might be some things that you could have to learn. And I'm all open for giving you all the materials and things that I find helpful. But teach them like any other child. Yeah. You know what I mean? There might be some strengths there, some things he has to work on. So address those just similar. So I see this book just going really far because, again, there's such a disparity within our community and within our population with Black people with Down syndrome, people of color. And I feel like it will just give a picture to what is real in our community. Yeah. So I really feel like it can go far. But the point was, like, when I wrote the book, like, I wasn't thinking oh my gosh, I'm just going to be this millionaire book author. It wasn't, the point was not to, I guess, profit or whatever, but the point was just to get it out there because it was like so important to me as, he's 6 now. So, each year I was like, okay, I still don't see any change. Okay, I'm still not seen as represented. Like when I would go to certain groups, I would be the only Black person there. Things that were put together to help parents of children with Down syndrome. And then if I saw a family, I'd be like, oh, do you know you can have this resource, that resource? And they'd be like, I didn't know that. Yeah. So I'm like, there has to be something in the community, something that brings people together. And hopefully this is like the start of it. And it's a children's book. So it's like, I still like to read children's books. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I just hope it goes far.
I really appreciate you taking that step, right? It's very easy for us, just in general, for people to sit back and be like, oh, there really needs to be, and you fill in the blank, but then just sit and wait. And then for you to take that initiative and say, well, I can play my part. I'm an author. I can write a children's book. I can find an illustrator, a publisher. All the things that went into place to making the book is going to make such a huge impact for people everywhere, which I love. So thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast, Meeka. Yeah. And I'll look forward to the rest of the series. We'll have you back on them hopefully at some point too to talk about those books as they come out. But for our listeners, I hope you found this as inspirational. I think, Meeka, you definitely make us all realize that there's a role that we all play. There's some gifts and talents that we all have that could potentially increase awareness of Down syndrome and any really aspect related to disability, right? Yeah. And
right. Because I'm like, I wrote a book, but I am not the only person who can write a book.
Yep, exactly.
Like all the parents out there, if you just don't see anything representing your child in anything, please write a book. Right. Yeah. I mean, I want to see so much after this or during this. I encourage everyone to do that. That would be wonderful.
Right, because the perspective that you bring as a Black woman, as a mother, you have a perspective that I cannot have as an Indian male, but that the same thing happens the other direction. And so things that we're able to bring into the conversation that would be unique to us, I think, is what you've really shown us today. So thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yes. And for our listeners, please stay tuned. We, as always, have some great podcasts in store ahead. But if you have any ideas or any interests that you would like us to cover, please send us an email to downsyndromecenter@chp.edu. That's all one word, Down Syndrome Center @chp.edu. But until next time, bye-bye.